Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome back to part 2 of this series of videos on the A2A Simulations B377 Stratocruiser in P3D version 3. This is a bit of a retro series of videos I'm doing. I've logged on this evening and we have some ATC at Shannon to take us outbound on our way across the transatlantic route to Gander in Newfoundland. This is a 1949/1950s flight, although of course because we're on VATSIM we have some modern traffic which we're going to have to slot in around the jets like we did in part 1, leaving Heathrow. I will jump in the cockpit very quickly, but I thought I'd just start the video with some beautiful external visuals. It's such a unique aircraft. The shape just, yeah, it takes some time getting used to this, but once you do, it does look very, very beautiful. Nothing quite like it in the world. Anyway, there's the Ryanair who's taxiing out. We have Shannon radar online today. We don't have any local ATC here at the airport, but we'll see what we can get away with. Okay, now if that's VATSIM velocity, that's pretty fast taxiing. Well, that was a pretty quick snap around for a Boeing 737. Somehow that doesn't feel like VATSIM velocity. That doesn't really seem like he's... We'll see when he rotates. So we'll see when he rotates. Anyway, jump into the aircraft. Let's start up track IR. Run as administrator. That usually works. Cool. There we go. Let's turn on the...
Okay, Captain. Electric on.
Electric's going on. Let me just double check the sound before
Yes,
I do anything else. There we go. Okay, so my auto flight engineer should run through his set of checklists. If we go to his back seat, we'll just see ambient air temperatures 15 to 16 degrees.
Set.
So he's going to turn on the heaters in time, and he's going to turn on the APU.
Fuel boosters on.
He's also going to turn on the fuel boosters. So for our transatlantic passage this morning, it's actually this evening, as you can see, real time, but I've artificially set it to be the morning. We go with heavy tanks. We used some ADI fluid recently. And I don't want to refill the ADI fluid because I want to see how many flights I can go before I realistically need to fill up. But the one thing I do need to fill up is oil. If you see, we've got roughly 15.5 gallons in each tank. We definitely need to take off with maximum oil. That's very important because these big engines, these big radials, definitely eat the oil very vigorously. Actually, I think I will just
air conditioning on. Ground blower set.
turn that down a little bit. He is kind of...
Okay, Captain. Systems are all set.
Okay, systems are all set. Let's just wait for the air conditioning to do its thing. Yep, he's turned on the body heater. And we're going to wait for that to heat up. While we're waiting for the cabin to heat up, let's just quickly look at my flight plan for today. You can see I have I'm on the ground here at Shannon. We're going to be going outbound from Shannon, basically almost due west, feet wet. We're going to be tracking the Loran station from Shannon outbound. Which is quite extensively, it reaches quite a far distance. We're going to be hitting the Juliet Weathership. Once we are there, we're then going to make a course for the Charlie Weathership. And then from there, we're going to fly inbound to Gander. And again, we're going to pick up the station in Gander. Now, the stations I'm talking about, the land-based stations for Shannon and Gander, I believe use LORAN, which is an old... it's basically non-existent today. But back in these days, they would have used LORAN to navigate long distance. It was, I believe, low frequency, which meant that the frequency traveled very far. I believe that's the way that was. Let's just watch that rotation for this Ryanair and see if this is really velocity for VATSIM, because I didn't really believe that based on his taxi. Okay, he's going. Yeah, I think actually that is velocity for VATSIM. I'm seeing some... Yeah. Yeah, that is velocity for VATSIM, I'm pretty sure. It just seemed a little bit glitchy on the way out, so... anyway... So I will show you more about the Weathership add-on that I have installed for the B377. If I bring up, that's Shift 5, if I bring up Shift 6, Shift 7, here we go. So Shift 7 by default in the Stratocruiser usually only gives you this radio 2D panel, but I've installed an add-on which gives you more functionality here with the radios. I want to... Ooh, if I hit map, is that going to help me? No. I want to go to Juliet first. Juliet, and that is the lat and long. 363. If I was to go 363 and fly out and search using the loop antenna bearing, I would get that signal needle bouncing up as I came in range. So that's what I'm going to do to basically hop, it's basically hop, skip and jump across the Atlantic from weathership to weathership. We'll talk more about that later. For now, I just want to get in the air. I just want to get up in the air, get a flight plan logged on VATSIM, and get this baby going. So what I'm going to do now, the cabin is now appropriately at the right temperature. Let's start loading our passengers. Doors are going to open, Heidi's going to do her thing, and you will start to hear passengers coming on board. Now we've done that, let's turn on the fasten seatbelt and the no smoking signs in preparation for our passengers, and let's turn on the beacon light in preparation for engine start fairly soon. There's the beacon light up top. So now what we need to do is just let's file our flight plan first. So let's go flight plan, EINN to CYQX, that's correct. Cruise speed, I'm going to say about 2, I'm going to leave it about 300. This is set up, I previously tried to do this flight, and I didn't have the time, so this is attempt 2. So basically all of this setup is still here. So Shannon, direct 52 degrees north, 020 west, and then direct 52 degrees north, 035 west, and then direct Gander is essentially my flight plan. Speedbird, or I'm going to do like that, Speedbird 501, that should be. It's a vintage 1950s Boeing Speedbird flight. I'm flying a Boeing 377 Stratocruiser on a VOR to VOR 1950s route, no GPS, crossing the Atlantic using Weathership NDB stations. There we go. That should file flight plan. So that's the flight plan filed. Now let's just do a quick setup with the radio altimeter. Let's turn both on both sides, and let's select the thousands range, and then let's select the altitude selected to 1,000 feet. So on climb out, we get annunciator light when... Oh, that was the aircraft just kind of jiggled there a little bit. We'll get an annunciator light when we're passing up through 1,000 feet, AGL, which above ground level, AGL. That's good. Okay, let's make sure auto rich is fine. Props are idle at the moment. Parking brake is set. That is pretty much as I need at the moment. I can see the wind means we're going to be taking off on runway 24. So let's just select the heading selector or the course selector as 24. Let's see what is the actual localizer. Is 239 actually. So let's select 239 set. Flight out cruise level today for this transatlantic flight is going to be 30,000 feet. So we are going to be doing a full climb all the way to 30,000 feet for you guys, and I will probably split this this video today into 2 or 3, maybe even 3 parts. First part is going to be the departure, and then I will cut the video and I'll come back to you as I continue up into the cruise. And we're going to cruise up to, we're going to climb up to flight level 310, and then we're going to descend down off the shelf to our actual cruise flight level of 300 to pick up speed for our optimum angle of attack in cruise. And I can talk a bit more about that later. I believe I talked a bit about that recently in a DC-6 video, but I'll do it again for this because the same aerodynamics applies. Okay, so with that done, let us contact ATC. So let's have a look. EISN control is 13115, so let's go set that. 131
Oscar Romeo India
135.
Let's recheck the Guardia for United CT.
It's a little bit on the loud side, but that's okay. So while the cabin is being secured, I've got 59 passengers on board, gross weight of 144.6 thousand pounds, which is 96% capacity. We've got 100% fuel, so we're right up against our max takeoff weight, so we will be using the ADI. Let's contact ATC and see what he has to say. Shannon Control, good evening. Speedbird 501 at Shannon on the ground. Radio check.
That's right, decimal niner, and we'll go back to United CT.
Oh. I stepped on someone. Shannon Control, Speedbird 501 on the ground at Shannon. Request radio check.
Signed, sealed, now let's deliver them, boys.
I tried this the other day, and I don't believe he actually was able to hear me, and I wonder if it's because the station he's calling from...
Easy 158, route direct to Latmo.
I wonder if it's because the station he's calling from, because I'm on the ground, he can't hear me.
Route direct to Latmo.
So I think the better way of doing it actually is to get in the air first on Unicom and then contact him. Let me try one last time. Shannon Control, good evening. Speedbird 501 on the ground at Shannon. Do you read me?
Speedbird 501, that was unreadable.
Okay. We'll take off on Unicom then and contact you in the air.
Shamrock 1531, route direct to Latmo, high speed approved.
See what he says about that.
And Shannon Control, United 22. United 22, go ahead. Yeah, went over to get our clearance because they hopped offline.
Still a little bit loud.
United 22, roger, continuous cleared. Continuous cleared, United 22.
Oh. Microphone device? Oh. Oh, maybe that was it. Shannon controls Speedbird 501. Do you read me now?
Speedbird 501, FM readability is now 5.
Thank you. I knew what that was. Okay, so Speedbird 501 is requesting IFR clearance as filed. Ready to copy when you are.
Speedbird 501, stand by, call you back. Break, Shamrock 1531, descent altitude 3,000 feet, level by lap mode, QNH.
I think what it was is I updated VPilot, but I didn't reset my my audio hardware. That's why he couldn't hear me. So.
Easy 1580, descent flight level 70.
Thankfully, it was such a small fix.
Speedbird 501, ready to copy clearance.
Affirm.
Speedbird 501, you clear to destination after departure. Actually, stand by.
Yes.
Speedbird 501, just check your flight plan there, looking for a valid SID for runway 24.
Would I be able to depart using radar vectors, as I'm not SID capable in this aircraft? It's a vintage 1950s airliner, Speedbird 501.
Speedbird 501, no problem at all. In that case, you're clear to destination after departure, fly runway heading runway 24, initial altitude 5,000 feet, squawk 6635.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Fly runway heading after departure up to 5,000 feet. Squawk 6635. Speedbird 501.
Speedbird 501. Rebecca is correct. 40 push and start.
Affirm 501. Okay, so he's given me clearance up to 5,000 feet. Let's set in the box 6635. That is 6.
Shamrock 36 Papa Shannon, report your passing altitude.
Set. It's so weird flying the Strat on VATSIM. It's a
Shamrock
weird
36
feeling.
Papa, thanks, identified on departure. Climb now, flight level 230.
It's just something so
end
few
deck.
people probably have ever done, I feel. Okay, so he's given me runway
Papa,
heading.
to reference, your departure clearance was to fly
5,000.
runway heading. You've already turned end deck before I gave you the instruction.
Okay. I'm essentially ready to go, folks. I've got
Shamrock
my packs.
1531 from lap mode, cleared as approach to it left, report established.
Let's turn on the ADI pump. Note, because they're set to auto, it doesn't. It means it takes over auto control of the pumps. It won't actually engage the pumps until the pressure is high enough. My throttle pressure is high enough, and it will. Those lights should come on as green. So. Also, let's just have a look at our taxi info. He should be giving us Delta to hold Delta 2. Shannon controls, Speedbird 501, ready for push and start.
Speedbird 501, your push and start is approved. The QNH is 1022.
Push and start approved, QNH 1022, Speedbird 501. Okay, so he has given us a push. It's going to be a straight back push, and then we will begin. We will start actually the two outboards. I have seen the Stratocruisers. I've seen archive footage of the Stratocruisers taxiing with the two inboards, but I don't feel it gives me enough leverage. And I don't know if
158 descend altitude 3,000.
I don't know if they ever
1019.
taxied with the outboards. I'm going to try it this evening just to see how it feels. But I can confirm they would regularly taxi with only the inboards. Off with the parking brake. Brake is off. Let's just do a quick check there of. Okay, that all works. Brakes are set. Okay, so let's go Shift P. In Lockheed Martin prepared 3D version 3. I don't have GSX installed because of VAS issues. Okay, so I'm going to crack the throttles. Prime, start, boost. And she comes alive immediately. Okay, and then prime, start.
Avian 30 Hotel Shannon, hello, identified. Climb now.
Boost.
Flight level 230. Right turn, direct end deck.
230, right turn, direct.
Come on, baby.
Easy 158. From that mode, clear DOS approach to it left. Port established.
Yes.
Oil pressure is rising.
Okay, that is number 1 and number 4. Let's stop the pushback now and engage the
Shannon
parking brake.
1531, thanks. Contact tower now, 118.6. All the best.
Now let's turn on the taxi light and the gear light.
Clear.
Speedbird 501, ready for taxi.
Speedbird 501, you can taxi Delta 1, Delta 2, hold short runway 24.
Taxi Delta 1, Delta 2, hold runway 24, 501. Okay, off with the parking brake. And because I have used the outboards, I've started the outboards. If I raise the right-hand throttle quadrant, I should get some. Well, if I raise both of them, it's hard to get the Strat when it's full and heavy, moving on 2 engines. So you do need to give it some good welly to begin with. And then it should be okay. I'll have to research and see if the Stratocruiser ever was taxied on the outboards instead of the inboards. It would be an interesting thing to try and find out, as I've only ever seen that archive footage using the inboards for taxiing. Typically, whenever see if I use the right hand outboard, yeah, you see that kicks me, that gives me a really good turning authority, and for a huge aircraft like this, that's really helpful. Okay, so just bringing those engines back level again and beginning to take the flaps down to flaps 20. We use 20 degrees of flaps for takeoff.
10 degrees. Flaps 15 degrees.
Okay.
062 Romeo, you're short even my airspace now, nothing further. Wanting you to come on 122.8, all the best.
Unicom 060, thanks, mate.
Okay, so let's put on those position lights. You can see we're picking up a bit more speed now, so we don't need that initial manifold pressure that we needed to start the beast rolling. We don't.
Shamrock 36 Papa, you're short leaving my airspace now, nothing further. Wanting
You
to
can
come on
hear that the
122.8.
APU is still online, and you still need the APU for cooling.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, you wouldn't need the APU for cooling. You need all 4 engines running for proper, adequate cooling on a hot day. But on a cold day, the heater will work, you know, even without any engines on, because it's a different system. Okay, so we will, at the hold, we will turn on engine 2 and 3. But for now, we're okay, just rolling up to hold at runway 24. So this is an old AeroSim FSX scenery for Shannon. There's pretty much no scenery for, payware dedicated scenery for Shannon existing for any simulator platform other than this scenery, as far as I'm aware. Maybe X-Plane has some obscure scenery that I don't know about, but apart from that, you're basically stuck with default or this. And I've managed to get this AeroSim scenery installed in P3D version 3 and P3D version 5, if you can believe it. It does not have winter textures, though. It only has summer textures. So in the winter time, in the winter months, when your Orbex Ireland scenery looks snowy, it looks a bit weird, but apart from that, it's fine. So we're going to roll all the way up to Delta 2 and hold for runway 24. And by the time he's given us our clearance to roll onto the active, hopefully we should have started our other engines. Let's just double check VATSIM, see if there's any. No, there's no aircraft around. Oceanic has gone offline. He will probably go offline after we've departed. Who knows? We're slowing down a little bit, so let's just bump up that manifold pressure again. Beautiful, beautiful livery. Beautiful. So I'll hope this evening to at least try to get up to cruise, and then maybe I will.
Ryanair 1322, you leave my airspace now, nothing further. Monitoring coming 122.
Maybe I'll splice the video at the beginning of cruise.
Easy 158, you can contact tower now. 118.6, all the best.
You won't believe the amount of times I've taken off in this simulator from Shannon.
Station Shannon's now closing. Monitoring Unicom on 122.
He's on to Unicom already, I thought so.
Bye.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just the wrong one. Did that last time. 122.8. Unicom set. Okay, so now I am on Unicom. I can do my own thing, but I will announce on Unicom as you would on an unmanned frequency. And essentially, the ATC was actually very basic in the late 1940s, early 50s. The air traffic control really wasn't the way the modern ATC was. It was essentially someone in the tower. There wasn't really that much standard phraseology. It was still very early days in that regard. So the fact that modern ATC controllers have gone offline, why is it taking me so long to stop? I have my full brakes on and I'm still rolling. Why? That's very strange. Why are my brakes so ineffective? I did not like that. I will have to check that. I wonder if FSUIPC has something. Never had that before in any time. That's strange. Okay. Anyway, let's just not be phased by that. Let's get engine 3. Select 3. Prime. Start. Boost. Might need a little bit more primer, but I classically always used to over prime the engines, so now I'm a little bit lax to prime it too much. Let's go 4 this time, see if that makes a difference. 1, 2, 3, 4. Start. Boost. Yeah, that was quicker. Maybe it was. I just wasn't priming it enough. I don't know.
Good afternoon to you from the flight deck. It's nice to have you with us today. It looks like we have nice weather ahead of us. If there's anything we can do to make your stay with us more enjoyable, just let us know and we'll do our best to accommodate.
Okay.
So buckle up and enjoy the flight.
Shannon traffic, Speedbird 501 is taking off runway 24. We'll be departing to the west. Okay, brakes off. All 4 radial engines now being throttled up to 30 inches manifold to get us moving. Again, if you remember, we are right up against our maximum takeoff weight, so why are differential brakes on? Okay, my brakes are a bit sticky. I don't know how to actually create proper null zones in FSUIPC, so I'll have to look into that. Rolling on to runway 24 and doing a left-hand turn here now. And I was looking up some history. The 377 characteristically had very loud squeaking brakes. It was a very normal thing to hear the shrieking brakes across the airfield when 377s were operating, and the C97s. Okay, brakes set. let's just do double checks. That's okay. Mixture is rich, prop is full, turbo is 0. We've got our ADI is set to on auto, strobe is on, beacons on, fasten seat belts are on, landing lights are on, and it's just basically off with the parking brake and up with the throttles. So let's just smoothly, and let's watch those lights as well. Oh, so those lights went off. That means the ADIs are on. And with ADI fluid, we can go right up to 60 inches of manifold pressure, which is unheard of for many other aircraft.
80. Rotate.
Okay, so gently start to rotate.
Setting cowl flaps.
Up she comes. Up through 500 feet per minute. Gear coming up.
Gear up.
Okay, now gear is up. Let's immediately bring our manifold back into 45 inches. And let's bring our RPM down to 2500. And the engines will sit there very happily all the way to cruise in that setting, but we will manipulate it a bit longer, a bit more as time goes on. Okay, on runway heading, we've got the Foynes float plane base just ahead of us, on the other side of the bay. That's where the old B314 Clippers would have taken off, which we don't have a very nice B314 to fly, which I talked about in part 1. But let's not worry about that now. Let's bring in our flaps. You can see
Flaps 15 degrees.
as the flaps come in, you can see the runway heading is there is a bit of a crosswind there. Not much of a crosswind though. Let's just adjust.
Flaps 10 degrees.
Actually, it feels really smooth. Very little turbulence right now, which is fine.
Flaps 5 degrees.
And then the flaps fully upwards.
Flaps up.
Okay. With flaps up, let's just increase our speed. I'm flying hands off at the moment, which is really nice. I've got 0 auto pitch reference coming up through 1,000 feet now. Once we hit that island, we'll take a right-hand turn onto course. Our course is going to be 280 for today. So let's set that. There is 276, 278, 279, 280 set. There's the little peninsula, and then the Foynes float plane base is just in here. So this bay is where the 314s would have taken off from. Okay, let's just increase our manifold up to about 46 inches.
Setting cowl flaps.
Just under 50 inches is generally a good place. 51 is our max climb manifold pressure, so that should be good right there. And let's just
Ram air.
nose down a little bit more. Right, autopilot on. Now let's bring in our lights. And let's turn off the gear light and the nose light. Let's turn on the passing light. Okay, now we're passing. There's the wharf or the dock where the float planes would have docked from in Foynes, and the Foynes the Foynes Float Plane Museum, I think, is one of these buildings down on that road there. Now we've made that turn. Let's take a right-hand turn, and I need to add in manually some rudder to keep the ball centered.
Setting cowl flaps.
Okay, so just a little bit more.
Ram air off.
There we go. That's about 240 set. Just double check my power settings, maybe ease them back slightly. The Boeing 377 Stratocruiser has some of the well, it has pretty much the most powerful radial engines of the day before jets came in commercially, and so when you run them high, they will catch fire or overheat very, very quickly. So you have to always err on the side of caution with these boys. I'm getting an astonishingly good climb performance for a full load, which I'm a bit surprised about, coming up through 3,000 feet. Okay, so what we'll do now is we will go to Shift 7, and let's look at Kilo Lima Mike. Let's go, actually no, just put that down. Let's go to the downloads folder, and let's go to our Weatherships manual. Now the Weathership manual has information on should have information on the HF stations: Prestwick, Shannon, Foynes, Gander, etc. So I need, what is the Peter Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Sugar, Tango, Uncle, Victor, Extra, Prestwick. Okay, that's
climbing to our cruise altitude. Upon reaching this altitude, we will dial the engines back to a nice cruise for you all.
There we go. So you can see now how this works. You can immediately see we've got a good signal. If we swing the dial behind us, you can see, because Shannon is behind us, you see where the needle peaks? Where the needle peaks is the bearing. So we need to turn our antenna and find that peak point, which is about there. So we know that Shannon is behind us on that angle, and we can confirm that. If I bring across little nav map, you can see that's correct. So we are actually getting a bearing off of the Shannon HF station, and that bearing, that HF station frequency is a solid frequency, meaning that it never turns itself off. It is constantly emitting. But the weatherships only transmit for 10 minutes with a 20-minute gap. So basically, it's like a blip. The NDB is only active for 10 minutes, then it's off for 20 minutes, and then it's active again for 10 minutes. So you only get that level of radio frequency. And then the range of the NDBs on the weatherships, the range is roughly 280 nautical miles maximum. So there's that to consider as well. But these HF stations go out very, very far. I believe the HF stations can go out to anywhere between 450 to 850 nautical miles, which is an incredible distance. And that's because it's a different frequency that they use than regular NDBs, I believe. The HF was a lower frequency signal. The LORAN stations go out between 550 to 880 nautical miles. That's even further. So yeah. So we've got the Shannon, and that tells you the lat and long of Shannon. And the map button doesn't seem to work. I'm not sure what that button is supposed to do. But you can adjust your heading as well. So basically, if we're heading 280 or thereabouts, if we change the actual heading to roughly 280, we can now get the active heading of Shannon, which is roughly 054. No, sorry, 0084 roughly. Which, let's go 084. Let's go from here. Let's go QDF range and bearing 084. Actually, 084 or roughly thereabouts is pretty much bang on running, putting a line between us through Shannon. So that is how accurate that is. Cool. So I'm not going to worry too much about my heading, as long as I'm heading roughly 280 magnetic. Yeah, and we're currently heading 284, so we do need to come back left slightly. Let's just get rid of that for the moment. Let's just come back left. There we go, that should do. Now let's just reassess. We have 169 knots in the climb, which is actually quite good. 169 is a good place to be. You see my auto flight engineers just turned on ram air, and you see the manifold pressures just change there slightly. And he will manage that. If the engines start overheating, he might actually change one of those to compensate and cool the engines down. So we might see those flickering. You can also see the ADI fluid. In the time that we had those engines up at 60 inches manifold, it was injecting water into the cylinders to cool the engines down while still being able to run at 60 inches manifold. So now that the ADI pumps are actually disengaged because we don't have that, we're not registering that high pressure anymore, we can turn off the pump. Not that we really need to turn off the pump. Because it's in auto, it knows that it doesn't need it, so it won't use it. If we were heavy and we needed to do a go-around, for instance, that's the only other time we'd really need to think about engaging that ADI fluid. And that's where you would leave it in auto in case you were, it was a turbulent day, you had a heavy aircraft, or had a short runway, or whatever it was. If you felt like you may need to do a go-around, that's the only other time other than takeoff I would ever see you using ADI fluid, because you would immediately need full power. So there we go. So -3 Celsius outside air temperature, and with -3 Celsius on the outside, our autoflight engineer, he has the pitot heat on. He doesn't have wings or prop because he doesn't detect icing. These clouds look pretty friendly to me, actually, so it's probably why he doesn't feel that we need icing. So now it's just, yeah, so he's gone offline now. Just make sure I had Squawk Mode Charlie there on, actually. It's always a mistake that I make. Now let's actually just have a look at a new winds aloft source that I began using recently, called windy.com. Now windy.com is a great source. I've been using it for my vintage flying almost all the time now, since I was told about it about a month ago. So it gives you this bar on the side, on the right hand side, that allows you to scroll from the surface all the way up to 45,000 feet, and it will show you what the winds aloft are. So we can always easily check. We can go to flight level 300 and it will show you what the winds are at 300. The yellow is the strongest wind, and the dark yellow is actually the strongest of strong wind. So that's 167 knot headwind in that area. From Shannon outbound, we're probably going to be hitting almost 100 knots on most of the way, which is a pretty serious headwind for a 1950s vintage airliner. But I have done some tests. I have tested flying the Stratocruiser at a lower altitude, say for instance flight level 240, to see if the lower headwind at a lower altitude means you can fly further. And actually you'd think it would, but actually because you're flying through denser air at flight level 240 than you would be at 300, actually the efficiency and range that you might be saving flying with a slower headwind at 240 actually is pretty much completely nullified, because you're flying through thinner air and therefore a higher ground speed or a higher true air speed at flight level 300. You pretty much, for a long cruise like this, you might as well go straight up to 300 and fight the winds up there. Despite a 100 knot headwind, you're actually not ultimately going to make a huge difference between, say, 200 or 300. So that's what I've found so far. If any of you have any other experiences with vintage cruise altitudes and efficiency, I'd love to hear from you. But essentially that's what myself and my friend Ian Fisher have found so far, and Adam on Discord, is that despite the stronger headwinds up at 300, that's where you will always be probably most efficient at 300 versus any lower in something like the Stratocruiser. So coming up through 10,000 feet already. I say already because before flying the Stratocruiser more regularly in these recent times, I was flying the Constellation. And the Constellation just doesn't have the speed, the altitude, and the climb performance of the Stratocruiser, even at full load. You really, really do find yourself gaping with an open mouth at those manifold pressures that you can just you can cruise. You cruise at a higher manifold pressure, you climb at a higher manifold pressure, and on takeoff with a full load, you're up to 60 inches manifold pressure in this thing. That is absolutely bonkers in comparison with pretty much every other aircraft of its day. This really was, in so many ways, this was the ultimate Concorde before the jet age. Before the jet age, this was the pinnacle. Nothing flew as high as this. Nothing flew as fast or almost as far as this. The Connie could fly. Well trimmed, with good efficiency. The Connie is up there as well in terms of range. But ultimately, this is your high flyer. And also remember that the Connie and the DC-6, which were its main competitors of the day, were flying down at flight level 220 at most, and you were hitting all sorts of weather at flight level 220, but up at 300 you passed over a significant amount of weather that you would be catching with the Connie and the DC-6. So when you think about that as well, it really did mean that elite airlines wanted this. But it only fit a specific role. And I found this very interesting when you look at how the Stratocruiser is designed. The Stratocruiser almost seems to be designed to fill the role when the Navigator did Dead Reckoning. He didn't use DMEs, distance measuring equipment, on those VORs. Didn't even have radial equipment. You couldn't even track a radial in this aircraft. You can kind of with a backwards cheat, which I've done on part 1, if you want to see that. when you tune the VOR behind you and you tune the one in front, and you look at the two needles pointing in 180 degrees from one another, and when those needles line up perfectly with one another, you know you're on the direct line between those 2 points. And if those two needles start to diverge and you get like a little angled V shape with those two needles, you know that you're deviating from that direct line between those 2 points. That's kind of the best you've got in terms of accuracy, and that can be very accurate actually if you get it right. But ultimately, these aircraft were designed for overseas flying, overseas cruising for hours and hours and hours over large stretches of vast trackless ocean. That's where the Stratocruiser had its place. And you didn't have VORs out there. So why bother put those instruments in the aircraft? That's the best guess I have as to why it's designed the way it is. Because the Constellation, the DC-6, pretty much everything else, the DC-3 for goodness sake, had VOR radial equipment, and in some cases distance measuring equipment. In the case of the L049 Lockheed Constellation that A2A simulations have also modeled, that has DME equipment in the base version of the Stratocruiser. Sorry, in the base version of the Constellation. Stratocruiser, no, you don't have that, which is strange. Okay, let's just jump back in the cockpit and adjust our manifold pressure back up to our desired cruise speed, and let's just double check our panels. Preparing and eating breakfast is good. Systems to watch, engine 3 is 219 Celsius, which is still within limits. Still climbing through 12,000 feet. All is looking good. Now let's go to that HF station. Ah, right. Let's just... That right there is the peak. I'm not going to worry about this heading setting. I'm just going to set it to 0. I'm just looking at the direction of that needle. Now, one thing about this gauge that can fool you out is the needle doesn't know if it's pointing away from the beacon or towards the beacon. So if I turn the needle and point it in completely the other direction, you could be fooled into thinking that you're flying towards the beacon instead of flying away from the beacon. But what you would notice over time, you would notice that the signal is dropping away, meaning you were flying away from the beacon, not towards it. So that's the one big clue that you would get in that situation. But we know that we have Shannon to our backs. We know we've gone feet wet in a westerly course over the Atlantic. So of course we know that Shannon is going to be behind us. So we do have that to help us. So we do know that that is roughly we are pretty much outbound from Shannon with Shannon directly behind us on a course of about 279, which is good. So we know we're in the right place. The question is now, how far out does that signal go from Shannon, and when can we start to expect to pick up the Juliet Weathership signal? That's a very good question. So if we come over, actually, let's just pause the audio from the simulator while we look at this. Let's just come over to our little nav map here. And the one thing I like about little nav map is that it shows the world as a globe. So for transatlantic crossings like this, the subtle angles of our route are better seen on an actual globe as opposed to a flat map. Okay, so we know from our manual for this add-on that for the land-based HF stations, 450 to 850 nautical miles. Now, I want to draw. How do I do this? Where are my tools? I want to draw like a big circle. How do I draw a big circle? This is where the tools that I'm using. This is where I start to get a bit units. No. This is where the tools that I'm using on the map are tools. Display options? Nope. I remember there's a way you can get toggle flight simulator connection, reset all messages, display options, map navigation, labels, keys. I'm not sure. This part of the video I could actually cut out, but if you want to see how this works as well, I guess that makes sense. There should just be map. I just want to draw a big circle on the map. Select user features like range rings or holdings for display. Yes, all of them. So if I right click on Shannon, for instance, and I go add range rings. Okay, it actually gives me an option. Right. Okay. So let's go range rings radii. I don't want 50, 100, 200 or 500. I want 450 and I want 850. Let's see if that works. Boom. Oh goodness me. That's far. Goodness me. So we're in the Shannon range all the way out to Juliet and beyond. Okay, so and then if we go to the Gander, let's do the same for Gander, add range rings, 450 and 580. Wow. There you go. That is pretty much full. Almost full coverage. And then let's go for the maximum range is somewhere between 200 and 280 for the weather stations. So let's go 200 and 280 there. Okay. And then for Juliet, let's do the same like so. Okay, that works. Right, perfect. I'm happy. So now remember, these are the manual for this add-on says somewhere between 450 and 850. So we don't actually know when the Shannon beacon will drop off on our radio. It's probably going to all be depending on various things, such as altitude is one thing. Weather might play into it as well, I'm not sure. Why is engine 1 low? Okay, now he's adjusted it. I need to watch that. Engine 3 is 220 degrees. That's not good. Why is it that? $222. Okay, at least it's holding at 222 and not rising further. That's where you start to worry. Anyway, I'll keep an eye on that. 223. Okay, he's taken it the ram air, and he's put on sheltered air to lower the manifold pressure. That's fine. Let's just take it easy then. Let's set to 45 inches manifold in the climb. You see my max climb says 46 to 51 inches manifold, with 5,500 on the RPM, which we are doing slightly less than that. So actually that should be fine. we will leave it at that. Let's just flatten out that ascent, that degrees, to roughly just above 3 inches. We will flatten out, but then with the increased speed, we will begin climbing again, and we want the increased speed for the increased cooling. That's the thought process behind that. So the lighting in this simulator is a bit meh, but you know, we're here for the 377. That's all we care about in this simulator platform. Yeah. So anyway, that as I was saying, guys, that add-on that we're using is called the Weathership's add-on for Lockheed Martin Prepared 3D, and it works in the 377, what we're flying now. It works in the Constellation. It also works in the DC-6. I'm sure it works in a lot more, but those are the primary vintage aircraft that I fly in P3D, and I fly the DC-6 and MSFS. And I know that there is a stellar navigation mod from Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, that is, which I haven't tried out for the DC-6 yet, but looking forward to it. I will do that at some point. I would really like to have either the Constellation from A2A or the Stratocruiser from A2A make it into Microsoft Flight Simulator. That would be a bit of a dream come true. So one day we can all live and dream. Okay, folks, so there's not really much that's going to be happening from now, other than pulling off the seatbelt at 17,000 feet. Lol. They'll be okay. They don't, you know. The thing is seatbelts off after seatbelts off above 10,000 feet might be a standard in modern commercial aviation. In a 737 or an A320, but here in the 1950s vintage era, you turn off the seatbelt signs whenever you know there's no turbulence, when you're above the cloud layer. There's a lot less of that commercial standardization that we see today, where we can be assured that we can fly to a particular standard that everyone else can attain. This was still back in 1949. This was a few years after World War II. Things were still being forged. The FAA and the CAA and the ESA and all these people hadn't even turned up yet, so a lot of standardization had yet to come in at this point. Anyway, as I said, coming up through 18,000 feet, I'm going to standardize my barometric pressure to 1013 in readiness for the higher altitudes, and we will continue climbing up to flight level 300, and I'll come back to you once we get up to 300, and we're going to continue climbing up for an extra 1,000 feet above our cruise level, and then we're going to nose down to build speed into our optimum cruise envelope.
I have some coffee, tea, Sanka.
There we go. I think we'll call it there, with Heidi bringing us some coffee, tea, and Sanka, and I have my own cup of tea here. Obviously, if you guys know who I am, I'm always drinking tea. Yeah, we'll come back to you later. So,
inbound on your left.
Ladies and gents, we are back. As you can see, we've just come up through 30,000 feet. 30,000 feet and 30,500 feet almost, and we're going to continue to climb up to 31,000 feet and then begin a descent. You can see our airspeed is down to 159, and our actual ground speed right now is 153. With a ground speed lower than our airspeed at this altitude, it means that our headwind is incredibly strong. So our headwind, the observed wind is 109 knot headwind, which is bad. But you wait until we get into cruise and we should improve. You can see at this altitude we're maxing out our manifold pressure. We have our turbo boosters at 95%. being managed by the autoflight engineer, and you can see our manifold pressure is pretty low. So at full passenger and fuel load, trying to climb to 30,000 feet, that's pretty much the hardest thing you can ever ask the Stratocruiser to do, which is what we're doing now. So give it a few more moments up to 31,000 feet. While we do that, let's just look at our weathership beacon. So our first weathership, let me see, is Juliet. And Juliet will be, let me just go to my, okay, so shift 7. So let's cycle through all of the different HF stations. Baker, Charlie,
Setting intercoolers.
Juliet, 363, like so. And now you can see the time is most important. The time, you see the minute hand is in between the two red zones. So we won't get a signal until the minute hand gets into the red zone. But what we can do is we can preempt that signal. We know it's going to be out in front of us somewhere. So let's just point it. I'm guessing, this is only a guess, it's going to be somewhere between here and about here. So I'm going to just place it there, and we're going to wait for that to turn on. In the time that will take to come online, let's start descending. Okay, so with our pitch reference, let's scroll that down to 0. And you can see our vertical speed immediately dropping, and we should start picking up speed pretty quick. And while we descend, we also need to set cruise power. So cruise power is 40 inches manifold. Let's bring those back to 40 inches. And our RPM should be 2100, which is right there. And we should be on cruise lean or auto lean, which is there. So with those settings done, let's just again adjust our manifold slightly. Continue a downwards trajectory, and you can see airspeed is up to 180 knots now, but you can see the max airspeed is coming down to meet us, because at 30,000 feet where it's so high, the overspeed and underspeed margins get quite narrow. That's what's called coffin corner in modern terms. So coming down through, let's start to level out now. We don't want to barrel down through 30,000 feet. We want to hit that smoothly. Oh no, we've got to continue that downwards trajectory, but just not too fast. There you go. Almost there. That's good. We'll leave it there, coming down at 100 feet per minute, and we'll get ready with our altitude hold switch in just a few moments now. 18 feet to go. Just waiting for that large hand to hit the top of the arc there. Altitude hold on. So with our altitude hold on, let's just bring the manifolds back to 40 inches, roughly 40 inches on both sides. With RPMs of about 2100, we should be getting 168 or thereabouts on the PSIs, which we are. Slightly more on the right side. Not sure about that, but let's just make sure that both sides are as equal as possible, which they look like they just about are. And that is our cruise setting, gentlemen. And climbing that extra 1,000 feet really helps settle you down into your optimum cruise speed. It means that your aircraft isn't fighting that angle of attack, that drag with a greater angle of attack at a lower speed, if you level out at your desired cruise speed without going 1,000 feet higher and then down off that shelf to accelerate up to your optimum cruise speed, it can take a long time for your aircraft to fight that angle of attack, that greater angle of attack, up to its optimum cruise speed. I learnt that with years of flying with Connie, basically. So with 85% fuel left remaining, we've made it to 30,000 feet. Let's now look at Shift 5. Let's look at our fuel estimated range is 1,800 nautical miles, and little nav map says I've got 1,500 nautical miles to fly, but I also have that 112 knot headwind, which might mean we run out of fuel. Who knows? We'll see how this goes. Yeah, I really hope I don't run out of fuel. That would be embarrassing, but hey, there we are. So, now let's see if our Shift 7... Yep, you can actually see that needle has just risen slightly. Yep, there we go. Okay, so that little upwards flick right there. Actually, that's showing that the Juliet weathership is dead ahead of us, which is nice to see. And that should only increase as we get closer. Let's also just look at the information on the right hand side. The wind, this is the weather report for the position we've tuned into. So they're saying the wind is coming from due west at 111 knots. The bar is 1021. Visibility is greater than 10. Magvar, I can't remember what Magvar means, but anyway. Loran position, so that's the position, the lat and long of the weathership, and then the nav calc. It's saying that my indicated and true airspeed of 308. I mean, I guess that's true, but because I've got that 100 knot headwind, it's literally 200 knots, not 300 knots. But yeah, so that's giving me a calculation. Desired cruise, desired course. Oh, desired course. Oh, I see. Oh, I don't know what that means. Oh, I see. Ah, there's evidently a few things here that I don't fully use. I've not used this in a long time, but there's a few things there that could benefit me that I don't know how that works. But yeah, it's just going to be a question of adjusting things as I go. I know that the weathership is dead ahead, which I'm really happy about. And having tuned up the Juliet weathership means that I know that I'm at least 280 nautical miles away from it at this point. So that is the beginning of my first leg across the Atlantic.
Just a little update from the flight deck. We've now settled into a nice cruise. Well, this is Boeing country up here where the flying is fast. We invite you down to the lower level to enjoy our unique lounge and bar, the only onboard lounge and bar on any commercial aircraft in the world today.
Well, that was beautifully coincidental. So he was talking about the lounge and bar, which is down on the lower floor. Let's just get out of the engine turbulence. It's on the lower floor below. You can see there are windows there on the other side. So I'm going to leave it there, ladies and gents. We've made it all the way up to cruise. We're cruising along really nicely. Now what all we've got to do now is just be watching our fuel consumption, watching the wind speeds, the headwind, and then tuning our navigation stations, our weatherships, and yeah, plodding along. So what I'll do is I'm going to finish this segment of the video here, and I will be back to you when we are close to the Juliet weathership. Or actually, yeah, actually that's true. I will come back to you when we're close to the Juliet weathership. It might take a while. I might actually, in real life, I might do this video over a couple of days because I've got some tight So I can't do this flight all in one go, I'm afraid. So we'll see how I go. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching, and I will catch you most likely tomorrow morning as we get close. Obviously, it'll just be a cut for you. Yeah, so see you in a second. Hello, ladies and gents, welcome back. You can see we're a bit closer to the Juliet weathership now. You can see the signal strength is getting stronger, but at the same time as getting stronger, the signal strength, the signal direction is leaning to the left, which makes me feel like the headwind has turned into a bit of a left-hand crosswind, and we can confirm that by going to shift 5, and we can see headwind 103, left crosswind 44 knots. So that is what's dragging us further north. So after looking at that, we will make a course change. So let's just make a course change. So we're currently heading 273. Let's head 263. Let's make that change and just watch our compass. 272. Maybe not 263, but 265. That should do the trick.
Setting intercoolers.
266. 265 and level. There we go. So heading 264. Now when we pull up shift 7 and rotate, that is pretty much that's the apex of the signal, which is slightly to our right hand side now, which is fine because we know if we have a left hand crosswind, we should be pointing into the wind anyway as we fly, so that's going to be okay. We'll just wait and watch for that signal to get stronger and stronger, and once we're right over top of the weathership, I'll come back on and you can see the weathership, the needle spike, and then the signal should then start decreasing. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it every second. It's getting slightly higher and higher. Right there. Okay. Well, that's it, guys. The 10-minute window is going to disappear for 20 minutes, and then it'll come back on. Who knows? Maybe by that time we'll get to the Juliet weathership, and then we'll start going outbound from Juliet towards Charlie. So I will catch you back later soon. Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome back. You can see now I've gotten even closer to Juliet. If I cycle the angle, you can see that I'm getting ever closer and closer and closer, but also the angle is changing more and more and more dramatically from ahead of us to our left-hand side, which means that we're passing on the left, and it's just gone out of range. So we're passing it on the left, just about now. Probably by the time it comes back, we will have been beyond it. So that is essentially us passing Juliet. And now what we need to do from Juliet, we need to leave Juliet on a heading of roughly 292, as per my flight plan. So from now, I'm going to make a turn. And based on that crosswind we have a crosswind again of about 30 knots, headwind of 123. I probably, if my range is 1500 nautical miles, that's only about 200 nautical miles of breathing room. So I'm going to stop my turn about there. Based on the drift that I'm getting, So at 292, that's quite a big offset, but we are essentially 47 knots of crosswind, which is pretty sizable. So that's the setting I'm going to take. That's the offset I'm going to take, and hopefully, as things go on, we will see how that affects our cruise, our heading. So you can see if I bring across a little nav map now, you can see from the beginning we've made it as far as Juliet, and you can see now we were right in saying that Juliet was we were passing Juliet on our left hand side. That was the course change we made when we first tuned Juliet, and we realized that we were being pushed off course, so then we adjusted and we came back in. Now passing Juliet, we've headed roughly outbound in the direction of 292 magnetic. We've got 564 nautical miles to run to Charlie. Now Charlie and Juliet both, they don't actually touch. There's a tiny bit of dead space, so we're going to have to monitor that. From Shannon, we probably could still pick up the Shannon station, but that again is there's not that much in terms of accuracy this far out that can really help us unless we're going towards it. We've got quite a strong headwind. I'm going to use Juliet as my outbound nav source to help me track this rough direction. There you go. You see, there's the change in leg. Anyway, folks, I'm going to come back to you at Charlie, and we're going to do the same. We're going to do the same process of tracking the nav ship, tracking the weather ship, and obtaining a course inbound to it.
Setting into coolers.
And I'll see you later. Ladies and gents, welcome back. We are now just at the top of descent. We've just moved from Charlie towards Gander. If we go into the flight deck and bring up some sheets, we can see that the range has actually increased. The wind has slackened off slightly, and we now have about 450 nautical miles of total range left, with only about 190 nautical miles to go to Gander. And the reason I know that, not because I have any distance measuring equipment or DME functionality in the aircraft, but of course because the very fact that I can tune the VOR at Gander at this distance means that I must be no greater than about 200 nautical miles to 190 nautical miles, depending on the altitude and the range that you're picking up the signal, usually in between 190 to 200 nautical miles distance in range. So I know that I'm at least that, and I can see that I'm heading directly towards the Gander VOR now. I was using the Gander VHF station a bit further out. As you can see, with the Gander station tuned, I can detect that it's just peaking dead ahead. So, and the signal is quite strong. Weather report, Lauren position. The calc says, yeah, the calc IAS, TAS, yeah. So there's no DME information here either. So you really you don't have that functionality. So descent. Let's talk about descent in the Stratocruiser. With captain of the ship, which you may not have installed because you may not be flying on P3D version 3 anymore. Most of you won't be, but captain of the ship add-on for the Stratocruiser gives you the dynamic passengers and crew. And if you begin descending any more than 1,000 feet per minute, your babies start crying because of the pressure change. So if I come off altitude hold, and I begin gradually bringing the manifold pressure all the way back, I'll bring the manifolds all the way back to about 25 inches. Low turbo pressure. I'm getting low turbo pressure. So let's go up to 30 inches and back to 25 to see when that appears. No, yeah, low turbo pressure. Okay, so we'll keep it at 30 inches manifold. And what we'll do is we'll scale the RPM back to about 1800 RPM actually should be fine for these engines. Big, heavy, big bladed engines. If we scale that RPM back, it means that we're not riding the pressure. The pressure isn't riding on the props. And it's not putting pressure on the engine unduly. If you want to sit and learn about prop physics, basically the propeller is its own wing flying through the air, if you think about it. And as that propeller cuts through the air, it has its own angle of attack. And if you flatten the blade or if you deepen the blade in terms of angle to the relative wind flow, you can create a situation where the speed of the aircraft, you're going so fast through the air, and if you put the RPM all the way up to a coarse pitch, the propellers themselves are actually acting like little air brakes in the airflow, because they're not at a sufficient enough angle. The front sides of the blades are actually creating drag because of the air hitting it. So that's quite evident in the Dash 8 Q400. If you fly that, you'll get a sense of that. If you're coming down in the descent and you've got some good speed on, and you whack those props into full pitch or full RPM, you will immediately notice the decrease in speed because of the way the propellers, the flat edge of the propeller, or the flat face of the propeller is actually fully face on into the wind flow. Anyway, enough badly explained prop physics here and prop dynamics. Let's have a look. Yes, you can see our downwards descent here. Now I'm on VATSIM. I'm on Unicom 122.8, and the problem is that it's actually really hard. That turbo's on 100%. Wow. It's actually really hard to find regular ATC that's online in Gander. The Oceanic isn't on very often. Shannon isn't on very often, but when you do get the Gander clearance, then that's good. I did file a flight plan actually. Let me just refile that file. Oh, hello. Oh, maybe I didn't hit file again, so it doesn't know where I'm coming to or going from. Okay, that's okay. We'll let that do its thing. So yeah, so I generally like to descend around 700 feet per minute. Around 700 to 800 feet per minute is, I feel, just right for the Stratocruiser. And if you start your descent, out 190 nautical miles away from your arrival destination, then you are giving yourself adequate time to slow down at the bottom of the descent, because you don't have any spoilers or anything like that. You really do pick up speed, and sometimes retain speed in these aircraft, these old vintage metal vintage beasts. Coming down through 28,000 feet. At 10,000 feet, well, actually, not at 10,000 feet. Whenever we get into the cloud layer, I'll turn on the fasten seatbelt sign. And the flight engineer might put on the wings and prop de-ice. You can see the amount of oil we've got. Look, we're down to 12 gallons of oil in each tank. And when these individual tanks for each engine get low enough, he then starts transferring oil from the standby oil tank into these individual tanks with the oil pump. So he manages that, and he manages everything like an absolute champ. He really keeps on top of things. If you didn't have auto flight engineer turned on, you would have a significant amount to be thinking about. And particularly when you fly this beast on VATSIM, or you fly and you're paying more attention to the navigation or something else, having that dynamic flight engineer is actually realistic. We seem to have the conception in our flight simming these days that to be realistic, I need to know how to do absolutely everything on this aircraft, and I need to go through every single checklist and every single this and that, and that might be your style of simming, and if it is, then that's fine. But with a vintage aircraft like this in the 50s, you had a 4-person crew in here. You had yourself, the first officer, the engineer, and the navigator. So when you pull up the Shift 5 2D panel and you read these stats here, the time and speeds, the fuel management, the air qualities, the headwind, the crosswinds, the temps and the visibilities, all of these things, the navigator would be feeding to you. You'd be turning around and asking the navigator, how much more range do we have, or how many more hours do we have on our current fuel? And he would chat with the flight engineer, and the flight engineer would turn around and tell him the fuel quantities, and then he would do some calculations, and he'd come back with you with some figures. So it was all dynamic. It was a busy hum of communication and collaboration. So the fact that you go and whack on the live engineer isn't necessarily realism breaking in an add-on like this. So in a 737, you might want FS to crew, and you'd be fine with FS to crew in a 737. That would give you the dynamic flight first officer. But yeah, it is what it is. So negative 44 Celsius on the old air temperature, and we'll just watch these manifold pressures as we come down through the layers. 26,000 feet now, and we've got some weather up ahead. If you look, oh yes, the weather is actually. Oh, hello. Let's just wait for this to up refresh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can see.
Pumping oil.
Yeah, you can hear the first officer pumping oil. Yeah, it's going to be pretty muddy and murky. Now, to be fair, we are doing this transatlantic crossing in February. We are doing this in February, or January, February, and ideally, you would want to be doing the southern route across the Atlantic in this time. In the time of February, you would want to be. Excuse me. Let me just show you let me pull up the map of the Atlantic for you. Oh, hello. So, you would want to be flying from London down to Lisbon, and then from Lisbon to the Azores, and the Azores to Bermuda, and then Bermuda to London. That's what they would have done in the winter months, because the Gulf Stream was so strong. You wouldn't want to fly Shannon to Gander. I mean, we're just doing a Shannon to Gander leg now, and at certain points throughout the cruise, I only had about 100 nautical miles or 200 nautical miles of extra fuel when I arrived at Shannon. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't leave you with that many options. That really doesn't. Particularly when you think, when you get to Gander, you have to position yourself. You have to, you might have to do a downwind. You might have to do a go around. Any of those reasons, you then are looking at a very serious situation, because the nearest alternate that can take you really is St. John's in southwest Newfoundland, and that's 150 nautical miles away. There's not many other options that have a runway in Newfoundland to take a Stratocruiser. So making that flight, making this flight across the Atlantic at this time of the year can be very, very dicey. Which it makes complete sense why they would go via the Azores and Bermuda, because you didn't have those Gulf Stream. If I actually pull up windy.com, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Windy.com. Here we go. Okay, so at 30,000 feet, which I'll just set that to now. There we go. You can see the weather systems coming through. You can see there's been a break in the Gulf Stream, mid-Atlantic, where you've got less than 100 knots. But then the second system of the second Gulf Stream weather system is coming through. Excuse me, up to 130 knots, 150 knots, and we're currently in this pocket of 40 to 50 knots, descending through 20,000 feet. So it's a bit easier for us now. But all the way along through the Atlantic, we were in this higher, 100 plus headwind. But if you go from London to Lisbon, and then from Lisbon to the Azores, look at this. Look at this. This is at 30,000 feet. You've only got 16 knot crosswind. That's absolutely. You've got 4 knot crosswind at 30,000 feet. Even though that looks like it's a long way round, when you think about the fuel savings you have because of the lack of that headwind, that really is a big deal. So that's why they would do that in winter. Also, the weather in the lower portion of the Atlantic would be much kinder to them at that time of the year. And then once you get to Bermuda, you just take off and you head over to New York, and it's a relatively short flight. So that's what they would do in the winter. And in the summer, you really wouldn't get as major winds and turbulence and weather. So it was a lot easier. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to come back in the summertime, and we'll have to do this same trip again in the summer and just be able to compare between the two. Okay, so 23,000 feet now. You can see that our vertical speed has risen to negative 450. So let's just bring those throttles down again. And we should... is the turbo still at 100%? No, he's brought the turbo down to 77%, which means we should now be able to bring the manifold down lower without having turbo issues. So there we go. We've brought that down low, and we should start to see that vertical speed increase in the negative. And let's set our altitude selector to 3,000 feet, because 3,000 feet is where I'm going to want to level off in preparation for decelerating for the end of the ILS. So if I set that, and then that will show us, the lights will change and show us when we hit 3,000 AGL above ground level. That's very helpful. So coming up ahead, I can see we definitely have a weather system we're coming into here. If I just slew the camera around, yeah, we're going to be going into these clouds, and once we're in these clouds, we're going to want that fasten seatbelt sign on. So even though it's slightly premature, CCC preparing dinner, unfortunately, I'm going to turn on those fasten seatbelt signs now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has put the fasten seatbelt sign up, so please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts until the sign is turned off.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain again. We're descending to our destination, so the stewardesses will now prepare the cabin for landing.
You see, so this is where it says the stewardesses are preparing dinner, but they might not get dinner by the time we're down. So it's just part of the cycle, the living cycle of the aircraft, that it thinks, oh yeah, it's that time of day where we're going to be preparing dinner, but we're actually going to be descending and landing fairly soon, landing fairly soon. So And another thing we can do sometime soon is we can go through another fire drill. I went through a fire drill in the Stratocruiser years and years and years ago, which was a very badly done video. So I think it's probably high time that I pay attention to how to deal with an engine fire in the Stratocruiser, particularly because it's the kind of aircraft that you would most likely have an engine fire in because of the way you stress the engine so far on an aircraft that's designed to run to the absolute limits of prop technology. I did fly the Stratocruiser recently over the Sahara Desert, and I was very interested to see what kind of engine temperatures I was going to see. I did it with my friend Ian Fisher, and it was interesting. Actually, up at 30,000 feet, it doesn't really matter if you're flying over the Gobi Desert or over the Atlantic. The temperatures at 30,000 feet are pretty much the same, pretty much negative 30 to 40 Celsius kind of ranges. But it's all about when you climb through that hotter air, when you're lower and you're heavier and you're full of fuel and passengers and you're trying to climb up to those cooler altitudes, how much are you prepared to stress those engines to climb? That's really the dangerous time. And then descending, you would think, descending would be fine because you've got your throttles all the way back in the descent, but actually no, you're still going to be sitting, decelerating down low and slowing down to prepare to land. So that's also something you have to be thinking about. Sadly we don't have any Gander ATC. Anyway, while we're waiting, let's open little Navigraph, sorry, and go CYQX. Okay, let's have a look at the Gander situation here. So we've got runway 13, 31, 03 and 21. Now, I know at Gander, because I've landed there a number of times, the only ILS we have is on runway 13 and runway 03. So depending on the weather report, if we go over and we can pull up the weather report at Gander right now through Active Sky. Wind is 290 at 16 knots, gusting 27. Visibility is 5 statute miles. Clouds are few at 1,700 feet, broken at 27, and broken at 4,600 feet. Temperature is negative 7 Celsius. Dew point is a negative 11, and precipitation is light snow. Now that's a classic winter in Newfoundland. Gusting 27 with snow. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. But most importantly, that wind is 290. So with 290, we're best coming in on 31. But also, because of the visibility, I would rather go with an ILS. So I'm gonna bet I'm gonna hang myself on 03. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to hang myself on 03. So it's going to be a crosswind, a gusty crosswind with snow, with very low temps. So the passengers are going to have to strap in tight. Coming down through 20,000 feet now. Let's just pay attention to that ILS. Sorry, not ILS, that RMI needle. So what with a 03 approach, we are going to have to swing around the south side of Gander which I've done many times before. I'm going to have to swing around the south side here. If I go to the approach and go at the ILS for 03, you can see we've got a circle to land, but I'm not going to use that as I don't have a DME or I don't have a GPS. But essentially, we're just going to come up around down from the north, and then around and then in on 03, which I've done many times before. And that the heading is 030 and the ILS is 1095. So we're currently tuned to 12.7, the Gander VOR, so we're coming inbound there. So at some point soon, once we have some sort of visual with the airport or the runway or the area, and we know we're very close, I'll go to 1095. Actually, no, I'll do that now because I can always tune Gander on nav 2. So I'll tune Gander nav 2 is 112.7. 112.7 is set, and we've got those two needles, and then we need 1095 on nav 1. And what that will do is that will give us our ILS, which is not active now, and he's put that turbo back up to 100%. Why has he done that?
Setting into coolers.
Now, if I bring the manifold down, though, now, we're not getting the turbo pressure warning. So something may have changed in our change of altitude and density of air. Something's changed there. We will be making calls on Unicom.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has put the no
Coming
smoking sign
down
up, so please
through
return to
18,000
the
feet,
no
let's go
smoking sign
to
is on.
local QNH. The local QNH at Gander is going to be 103. So that is 103 set. And 103 set cross check passing 1800, 300 feet. Now set cross check. Indicating still 265 degrees inbound with the needle slightly on our left, which is fine. Let's see what our wind situation. Headwind is 64 knots. Right crosswind is 23 knots. So if the needle's pointing to the left, but we have a right crosswind, that needle's slowly going to drag to the right. So we should be fine with that that heading. And really, if you fly radial airliners right, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels like very little happens until the very end of the ILS, and as the glide comes in, that's where your job starts. But really, coming down in the descent, as long as your pressures are all good, as long as your RPMs, your torques, as long as you're monitoring all these things frequently. Yeah, you see, as I thought, as we came down through the cloud layer, he's turned on the props and the wing anti-ice, which is, he's good. He's good at his job. Unfortunately, in P3D, icing isn't really modeled at all. So, you know, one day, hopefully, A2A might bring the 377 into Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we'll get some next level stuff going on. But until then, I'm here hanging out in P3D version 3. So One tip I would say about flight simming, always bring a big cup of tea. That's a free tip for you right there. Completely for free. You're welcome. Or coffee, as is your wont. Okay folks, so there's really not much happening until we get down lower to the end of the glide. Sorry, until we begin decelling. Let's just double check VATSIM.
Setting into cooler.
Okay, 17,000 feet. I will be back folks as we flatten out at 3,000. Ladies and gents, welcome back. We are coming close to our decel altitude, which is 3,000 feet. And just while we're about it, you can see that the wind, as I've descended, I haven't changed my heading since you last saw me, and that VOR has swung to the right hand side. And I can also see the localizer has come alive on the ILS gauge, so I know I must be getting close now. So and unfortunately I don't have any distance measuring equipment, but based on watching that needle, the faster that needle starts turning, once that needle swings around to almost the 90 degrees position, I know I'm gonna take a right hand turn onto the localizer. There you can see the snow and rain. We've turned on the landing lights. We flip back into the flight engineer. You can see he's still got the prop and wing pitos on, or the prop and wing anti-ice. So let's just maintain that descent rate as best we can. Just put maybe a notch or two, and the flight engineers also brought the turbo down to 62%, which is good. Really need to get down to our. Oh, yeah, you can hear. Oh, the turbulence is not good. Let's get the mixtures on rich now. Let's bring the RPM up to 2,500. Now, captain of the ship says the passengers are eating dinner, which is just the wrong time. I hope that doesn't reflect on my captain's log. Probably will. Hopefully it won't. 4,000 feet coming up. Okay, I'm beginning to see some familiar territory here. I believe this might be the lake. Gander, I think, is going to be off my right hand side here, if I'm reading this right. Yeah, if Gander is off to my right hand side here, maybe in this direction, this big body of water is the one we fly out here, take a right hand turn, and we come down 03 across that body of water. So almost there now. Let's just go and look at our actual. Okay, 3,100 feet on the radio altitude, so we know we're close. Okay, let's start bringing that back up and arresting that descent as we're getting close to 3,000 now.
Altitude, hold
There we go. Altitude hold on at 3,000. And now it's all about decelerating into the white bar and then bringing in flaps 5 and then gear down. Okay, the aircraft is going to start pitching up soon. Yep, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Is that a sighting of the airfield there? No, not quite. Not quite. A little bit further to go, but I know the airfield is over there somewhere, and we've got to come around. You can see the aircraft in nose starting to pitch up now to maintain that altitude, and it'll start. But yep, the aircraft has already started bleeding off that speed. So let's just reintroduce a bit of manifold pressure so that we don't stall, and let's introduce 5 degrees of flaps. Now remember I said the needle was going to swing all the way around to the right hand side. As that starts happening, we've got to pay attention to our localizer now, because the localizer is jutting out this direction, and we're going to come and attack it from the east side. Let's try not to go below 150. So adjust the camera view there. That's a nice camera view, I like that one. Okay. It's going to be a 37 knot crosswind on this one. I am actually not... I am not looking forward to this, but I don't see any other way that we're going to get in there with any kind of... with visibility that's not terribly good. If I have to do a go-around, folks, I'm going to do a go-around. So I'm going to actually put the ADI pump on in readiness for that. You can see our radio altitude. We're slightly below 3,000 radio. We're about 300 feet. So basically, the aircraft, the runway is going to be roughly 300 feet above sea level. That's what I'm estimating. Okay, we can see the glide is coming in, which means we're close now. You see the VOR is just over 90 degrees, so we should really be thinking about turning to the right pretty soon now. That's going to be where the airfield is, right there. And I can see my FPS is getting a little bit glitchy, and that's probably the Gander scenery. Not that I have any payware or anything like that, but it's still... Ooh, 37 knot crosswind. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, I'm gonna start my turn. Okay, so I'm gonna take the autopilot off now. This is all manual flying from here on. Let's take a right-hand turn. Introduce some rudder. This aircraft needs a lot of rudder. You make the slightest aileron input, and that you see the slip and ball indicator shows that you need a huge amount of rudder. Look at that, beautiful. Take a screenshot there, quite like that one. Okay, now we're gonna keep this. We're gonna keep the VOR on our right hand side. We need to level out. Let's keep the VOR on our 9 o'clock position. Sorry, 3 o'clock position. As much as possible as we come around it until we find the localizer. So again, another turn. I think we're going to see the localizer pretty soon now. As soon as we see that localizer, we're going to be doing a 30 degree bank turn. Yeah, there's the glide. The glide is a little bit low, so let's just come down ever so slightly. We're maintaining speed, which is really nice to see. Any minute now, we're going to see that localizer moving. minute now. Any second. There it is. Right, let's start our turn. Gear down. Boom, gear down. And 30-degree bank is there. Okay, I can see the runway. Way off in the distance. I can see the runway. And we all of a sudden need a lot more flaps. Let's get these flaps down now. Okay, mixture is rich. Oh, that crosswind. Oh, that crosswind. Goodness me.
Setting into coolers.
Flaps 30 degrees.
Okay, 30 degrees flaps. Right, let's do some go-around procedures. Gear down, 3 green. Flaps 30. Mixture rich. Prop needs to go full. Prop is full. That's the localizer. A little bit high on the glide. Now, if we need to go around, which I'm saying we might, then it's going to be manifold up to 60 inches. And we need to raise the flaps to 20 degrees.
Prepare the cabin for landing.
Oh, goodness me. Oh, goodness me. This is where I'm starting to regret my life choices here. And I might ruin my captain of the ship career. All on this one landing.
Setting into coolers. Shot there.
Okay, we're getting close now. Let's get the nose and the gear on. And now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to concentrate on flying the aircraft here. There's the localizer. There's the loc. Let's just... Okay, I need to cut the engines. Sorry, that's more than 1,000 feet per minute, and that's where that baby starts crying. And there's the glide. Right.
Setting into coolers.
Here we go. Here we go, boys. Okay, I'm visual now. I'm not going to worry about...
Turbo bleeder set.
200 feet. 50. 30. 20.
Setting into coolers. Setting cowl flaps.
Oh.
Flaps up.
Oh. I'm not going to win it.
This
No.
is your captain. We're now taxiing back to the terminal. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete stop. As the captain, I want to say that it was a pleasure to have you with us. We hope to see you again soon.
Oh, I'm not winning any award. Look at that crosswind. I'm not going to win any awards for that landing, but I got it down, and I'm interested to see what my landing rate will be. I think for the length of time I've been flying the Stratocruiser again, I think I'm fairly happy with that landing in that weather condition. Gander traffic, Speedbird 501 is clear of active 30 and taxiing to parking. Well, it's very hard to do to land. It's very hard to do a landing in Gander with a runway that has absolutely no ILS, because the perfect runway to land on would have been that one coming in from right to left. But with no ILS equipment, I'm going to have to research that if they have like a... Let's see what else they might have there. 3-1 approach. Runway 3-1. Oh, they do have an RNAV. Okay, but I don't have RNAV equipment. It's... yeah. Okay, so I'm going to... Okay. Off with engines 1 and 4, and we're going to taxi in on the inboards. So position light is on, taxi's on, beacon's on, and that's it. Oh, where's the 747? There's usually a 747, a British Airways 747 sitting here. Maybe the autogen isn't working properly. Okay, let's bring up the right-hand engine. Okay, we won't take this first pad, but we'll take the second pad here at Gander. And while doing so, we'll turn off the passing light and the nose light so that we don't blind the ground crew. Okay, we need a good swing on this, so I'm going to rev up the outboard engine. There we go. Beautiful. This is where I've parked the Connie many a time. Okay. Park brake is set. Let's bring the engines to idle. And in doing so, let's bring
Setting cowl flaps. Shutting down systems.
all the props to fuel cutoff, and the mags finally to off. And let's unload. So, ladies and gents, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pretty hectic flight across the Atlantic. This weather, I wasn't ever expecting the weather to be amazing. Obviously, crossing the Atlantic in February, but you know, it makes for more interesting crossing. That headwind almost had us at one point because I thought we definitely didn't have enough alternate fuel. Let alone if that was going to be a botched landing attempt, if I didn't feel right coming down through minimums, if there was going to be any wind gusts on final, I may have done a missed approach, but thankfully we didn't have to do that, and I felt like I could put the bird down with some level of competence. So I'm going to have to go and watch that back afterwards, but I think for now we've made it as far as Gander, and we're going to deboard. We're going to clean the aircraft, get the cleaners in overnight, and part 3 will be from Gander to LaGuardia in New York, and that is going to be the end of this London to New York leg, and the final leg of the video will be the return journey from London, completely direct from London to it will be completely direct from New York to London, because the Gulf Stream will be with us, and we will make very good time, and we can do that all on one leg. So that's going to be fun, and yeah. Hopefully we'll get some good ATC coming into New York. I'll definitely try and time the part 3 for based off of the London and Boston ATC coming down across the eastern seaboard. So yeah, so let's jump in. And just before you leave us, or I leave you, I'm just going to check my engines are all still excellent. That is exactly what I want to see. But most importantly, I want to see what they thought of my landing. Let's go to Volanta, actually, and go review your flight. You can see I didn't actually start tracking until I took off by accident, but it would have been nice to catch the beginning there. You can see where we made some adjustments to keep track of the weather ships, and then. Yeah, as I came down, I could see I made that turn. I made that final turn and that wobble. That was a bit of a wobbly approach there, but you can see I managed to straighten it out. And negative 149 feet per minute at 92 knots with the wind at 280 at 25 knots at 1.2 Gs. I am really happy. I am very, very happy with that landing rate, actually. That's a landing rate, that's bang on, actually, for a landing rate. And based on the fact I had a 25 knot crosswind at the point of touchdown, I'm very happy with that. Unfortunately, it's not a landing that they're going to be terribly amazed with. The air on that plane was so fresh. Personal notes, my landing was just okay. The airline is pretty good to me. You do a good job. Okay, 14 flights, 62 hours, 1,800 statute miles flown. So the actual flight time was 8 hours and 38 minutes. Ground, actually, yeah, so the air distance was only 1,996 statute miles, but not nautical miles. Fuel cost, maintenance cost per mile. So there you go, folks. That was my transatlantic flight in February in the Stratocruiser. I tried to grab as much ATC as I could without, you know, making this series so long that I'm waiting for the next zone to have ATC. That has ruined a video series from in the past. But I want to keep this thing going, so I actually filmed this video over a period of 24 hours. So yeah, tried my best on this one, and hopefully the next video into New York will be in one sitting. So looking forward to that. Okay, folks, catch you later.